In March 2003, RUF commander Fode Sanko was charged on 17 counts of crimes against humanity. But Sanko never stood trial. A few months later, he died while in prison. But the tribunal's most important indictment was reserved for the man who helped finance the war and directed it from afar.
On behalf of the people of Sierra Leone and the international community, I announce the indictment of Charles Yankee Taylor.
Later, he was transferred to the International Court in The Hague. Charles Taylor still awaits trial. The Special Court for Sierra Leone has handed down 13 indictments. Verdicts are expected in 2007. Even as the scars of war slowly fade, African countries characterized by informal alluvial diamond mining still remain prone to conflict.
The conflict diamond issue is still pertinent because it can flare up at any time. Africa is a volatile region. One of the key problems in looking at the whole diamond issue is that really the root causes of the conflicts haven't been addressed. The corruption, the poverty, the lack of resources, the lack of opportunities for people.
Destitute young men toil in the mines. Poverty is everywhere.
One of the very strange things about the diamond producing areas in Africa is that they're often the poorest. You can go to a village that has been mining diamonds for 50, 60 years and they don't even have a water pump. Now, millions of dollars worth of diamonds have come out of that area, and why is it so poor? It's very hard to understand.
Most turn to mining because they lack alternatives. During the Sierra Leone War, Usman Conte was enslaved by the RUF and forced to mine. In an inescapable irony, he again digs for diamonds. Without education, skills, or job opportunities, it is the only work he can find. In a different way, he remains a captive to diamonds.
At this job, I haven't had anything yet. I am still trying. If I had another job, I could leave the mining job. But since I don't have another, I will stay here until God gives me something else.
Diggers are paid in a variety of ways. Some receive a minuscule share of what they mine. Others work simply for a meal. Some earn a scant wage. Most work under false hopes.
It's a casino economy. Everybody thinks they're going to find the big one, but of course, hardly anybody ever does find the big one. The mining conditions are awful. People dig in the hot sun all day long, often up to their waist in filthy water. There's no social cohesion. There's a lot of violence. These mining areas are great vectors for malaria, for HIV/AIDS, for all kinds of societal problems.
Their daily routine is it's really nothing more than bonded slavery.
In an effort to empower those upon whose backs diamond riches are born, the NGOs Global Witness and Partnership Africa Canada, in conjunction with De Beers, formed the Diamond Development Initiative.
There are 1 million, if not 1.5 million, artisanal alluvial diamond diggers earning $1 a day. What we're suggesting with the Diamond Development Initiative, the DDI, is that you need economic solutions to economic problems. That if you can get better prices for the diggers, if you can formalize this vast informal diamond economy, then you can bring peace and development to the diamond areas.
There can be no future as long as the people that are working in these areas do not benefit. We believe that the communities, first of all, are the priority.
The first goal of the Diamond Development Initiative is to educate miners.
Generally speaking, diggers will have an idea of what a low-value diamond is worth. It's when you get into the better stuff that people actually don't know what they're worth. That's when people get cheated, and that's where the huge markup is between the miner and the exporter.
Why is it that a diamond in Sierra Leone can be bought for $20 and then sold in Antwerp for $1,500? It's perverse. What really needs to happen is for the diamond industry and for governments to actually start investing in their development, to start paying a decent wage to the people that are working there, but also a realistic price for the diamonds.
What we have to do is find ways to validate African diamonds, not just because they're conflict-free, but because they come from developmentally sound sources, that people actually get a fair price for the diamonds.
It's a worthy but difficult task, because history has vividly shown how diamonds pulled from West and Central African conflict zones have been misused, often with tragic consequences.
At the end of the day, what is going to eradicate conflict diamonds, what is going to be an end to the blood diamond trade, is going to be the end of the conflict where these diamonds are being extracted from in the first place.
The conflicting theories began in the closing days of the Second World War. With the Russians on the verge of capturing Berlin, the Führer retreated to a bunker under his chancellery. With him were Nazi propaganda chief Joseph Goebbels, his mistress Eva Braun, and other members of his personal staff. One account, based on the testimony of Hitler's aides, says that shortly after a gunshot was heard. Rushing in, the aides found Hitler seated on a chair, a bullet through his head. Nearby on a couch was the body of Eva Braun. There was a strong smell of bitter almonds, the telltale odor of cyanide. Following Hitler's instructions, the bodies were taken out, doused with petrol and set ablaze. With Russian shells exploding around them, the aides quickly buried the charred bodies. 2 days later, Russian troops entered the Chancellery courtyard and discovered bodies in shallow graves. Digging out one badly burned corpse, the Russians identified it through dental records as the remains of Adolf Hitler. The Russian intelligence agency, SMERSH, found bits of broken glass in Hitler's mouth, and with them the telltale smell of bitter almonds. They informed Stalin that Hitler had committed suicide by taking cyanide. They found no evidence of Hitler shooting himself. The Western Allies demanded to see Hitler's body, but the Russians kept their discovery a secret. Instead, they said Hitler had escaped Berlin to an area of Germany controlled by the British. 2 months later, British intelligence conducted its own investigation into Hitler's death. They had no access to Hitler's body and could only interview a few of the people who were in the bunker at the time. The crucial witnesses had been imprisoned by the Russians and were being interrogated in secret. The British concluded that Hitler had shot himself in the valiant fashion of a German officer who did not wish to surrender. The British theory contradicted the earlier SMERSH report, and the theory disturbed Stalin. The British made Hitler's death seem almost noble. Stalin ordered another of his secret intelligence agencies, the NKVD, to reinvestigate. The NKVD returned to Hitler's grave to sift through the rubble and found a skull fragment that had been left behind, perhaps blown off by a gunshot to the head. It contained what appears to be a bullet hole. The fragment was sent to Moscow for analysis. It was in Stalin's interest to suppress the bullet hole evidence. The rest of Hitler's remains were buried under concrete on a Russian intelligence base in East Germany. But in 1970, when the Russians turned the base over to the East Germans, KGB chief Yuri Andropov ordered every physical trace of Hitler to be destroyed, so the grave would not become a shrine. In 1993, a Russian archivist in Moscow found a brown envelope containing a skull fragment and other written evidence from the NKVD investigation. This material is what the Russians put on display in the spring of 2000, claiming it supported the latest theory of the dictator's death.
Hitler put a cyanide capsule in his mouth, and a gun to his head, bit down on the cyanide capsule, and pulled the trigger an instant afterwards, just to make sure that he accomplished the deed.
If indeed the skull fragment is Hitler's, it is one of the dictator's worst nightmares come true. He had written in his diary, "I do not wish to be taken prisoner by the Russians and displayed like an exhibit in a museum."
History